Now is 7:40 p.m. Just a few minutes ago, I finished a view of Jupiter on the and the, what I did is I left the settings precisely the same in terms of gain and in terms of exposure time to precisely the same settings as well as the display contrast when I turned over to the moon. This is what turned up. There's quite a disparity between the bright eastern side of facing the sun and the darker, more western side, which the sun is coming in at a rather oblique angle. I am fascinated by something I just noticed. This should be crater Tycho, and I never really noticed these skid marks before. They're either skid marks or rays. So whenever this crater was created, something came in at this particular angle. Anyway, I'm now going to adjust the settings. Let me tell you what the exposure was on Jupiter. Basically 9,300 microseconds with a gain of 97. And the gain value goes all the way up to 600, which makes it look like a sun. So let's drop the gain down. The best to always drop the gain down. That way you get a more uniform presentation of brightness on the screen. I'm going to push up the brightness all the way up to max, which is 1,000 microseconds. And let's leave it there. Now, we're going to do our usual thing. This lunar video is basically going to run for 15 minutes, so we'll see if anything transits over it. I did set the focus on Jupiter. It looks pretty good. It's a lot easier when the scope is facing west. I could just reach up with my right hand and make minute adjustments while watching in real time the results. Now I'm going to test myself on a few things. See if I can remember the names of various features of the moon. The types of features, of course, are Maria. There's an Oceanus, Procellarum. There's Maria like Tranquillitatis, where the Apollo 11 mission landed. There are craters, walled plains like Plato. There are bright craters like Stevinus. There are the largest crater is Clavius. This crater here is called, I believe it's called Aristophanes. I'm not sure what this one is. And then there's Kepler over here. So probably best to remember this one. So Aristophanes, question mark, Kepler, and then over right in this region here would be the walled plain Grimaldi, which is at least 2 times larger than the walled plain Plato. We have some other craters. This is this luminous crater is Langrenus. Langrenus is roughly at about the same distance from the lunar limb as Mare Crisium. Now, this is Tranquillitatis. I believe this is Serenitatis. And then we have Nectaris and Fecunditatis here. Not bad. I remembered that. Wow, I'm blown away. We have, besides this large Oceanus with this huge crater, is it Aristophanes? Anyway, in its midst, we also have some Maria to the right and to the left. One of them is Nubium. So I'm not sure if Nubium is to the south or to this larger one to the north. And this is Mare Frigoris, and it looks kind of like a huge bird with wings spreading off in both directions. The most obvious mountain chains on the moon run along this Mare, which I'll have to figure out later on and get the names for the crater for the mountain ranges. And if we do see something transit the moon, whether it's a bird, an insect, or commercial aircraft, or a UFO, I will label up some more so and correct any errors in my identification of features. All right, for some reason, the moon is peppered with more craters to the South Pole and fewer to the North Pole. For some reason, we seem to have more Maria concentration towards the north and less Maria to the south. Now, if you look at this whole feature like this, it almost looks like a Taoist yin-yang symbol. Now, the yin-yang symbol is supposed to represent something that I've come to understand in cosmology as the interplay between spatial temporal moments, the dark ones, and what I call the transcendental, which nobody can account for, that set the Big Bang into motion. So everything goes kind of like through a cycle where matter starts to predominate, and its principal feature is entropy. Matter wants to fall apart again. And the transcendental begins to dominate a bit more, which we can think of as energy or spirit. The play between these two in a Taoist sense or in a metaphysical sense is called consciousness. So our consciousness is probably best represented by this little area here called sinus medi, which is presumably the XY central point. It's kind of a lake in the middle of the moon. I believe it might be right here, sinus medi, where either the dark or the light is predominant, but it brings to us awareness of the flux of what is called entropy, and the other one, which I call destiny. So basically the formula in Greek philosophy would be the future creates the present out of the past, or they would say teleos, the future creates the present, logos, the word, out of the past, hylos. That's my interpretation of it anyway. Now, everything I'm telling you, of course, is just a story. And that story basically is the way we perceive the world around us. Everybody has a unique perspective because we're all the center of our own little universes. And that center is sinus medi on the moon. So we're now almost 7 minutes in, covered a little bit of philosophy, we've covered a little bit of cosmology, we've covered some of the lunar features, and how some of them were created, because I had never quite noticed this almost sliding appearance of the whatever impactor occurred to create the crater Tycho on the moon. Now there are some other interesting craters right here to the south of Sinus Medi, and they should probably be known or named. I've already named, of course, Stevinus and Plato, etc., etc., etc. But this is a great, very nice, low-power view. Let me tell you what the magnification is. This magnification is 150x, and we're fitting the whole moon in pretty much, which means it's got about a 30% field, 30 arc-minute field of view almost. This is 105x. It's one of my favorite magnifications for deep sky work. We do have a helicopter passing overhead. I've noticed that background noise doesn't tend to affect, and this is a good test, the microphone inside the laptop as much as I might otherwise hear with my ears. Okay, so Langrenus, Stevinus, and there's a couple other craters which I need to name, Theophilus, Carillus, but they're not easily visible right now. I believe they're right here. Theophilus, Carillus, and Caterina. What I do want to learn more about is the names of these craters here that I mentioned earlier, and I'll probably name all 5 of them because they're so significant. The other thing I want to learn more about in terms of naming, labeling, is the series of mountains that rings round about this particular Maria here, which I can't quite remember the name of. But we did remember Mare Frigoris. There's a nice crater in Frigoris, which probably should have a name. I would recommend that any budding lunar astronomer who wants to be able to point out things and explain things learn basically about the history of the Maria, which, by the way, only faced towards the Earth because after the Earth-Moon system, there was a collision with the Earth and it helped create the Earth-Moon system. The Maria are all basically facing deeper into the gravitational well of the what I would call 2 planets. I think we have a double planet here, an Earth and Moon. The far side of the moon is much more like this the south and eastern part of the moon here. I'm not sure if there's many rays and things. It might be worthwhile to go and characterize the far side of the moon because it will have entirely different feature set and overall macro level phenomenal details that are different because it is further away from the Earth's gravity well. Meanwhile, the moon is pretty much locked in, facing the Earth with some libation slightly. So sometimes these Maria near the limb will penetrate a little further in, and then sometimes they'll almost disappear. If you are a flat earther, you have to come to terms and make up for yourself how you can explain the fact that there is perspective on the moon. Craters in the center of the moon look rounder, craters away from the moon look squatter. So if you're a flat earther, you might be able to say something like, oh, the moon is round but the Earth is flat. And that's up to you. But I would basically say it's a good thing to go with the evidence. Not what people tell you, but what you see with your own eyes. You may hear things from other people, and those things could be right or wrong, but you should I recommend you evaluate them according to your own understanding. And if you don't understand, dig deeper. Now, you can't dig deep on everything because there's a basic principle of the universe called opportunity cost. You only have so much time and so much energy to be devoted to so little about the universe. My own approach to all this is basically to be as generalized as possible. For instance, as I was saying, there are stories associated. Everything I just told you about the moon is like a story. And that story is supposed to represent reality to some degree. Now, the further our stories get from reality, the more of a conflict we can have between the yin and the yang principles in our lives, which causes a good deal of stress. It's helpful to have a story that basically, to some degree, reflects the universe as it is. That is called epistemo-ontological reciprocity. You got to have a story. A story is just a story. It's not reality. And that's epistemology. The stories we tell ourselves about the world and about ourselves and about everyone else. And the other side is ontology, which is reality. Which is why, in many ways, there is potential for what is called an ontological shock wave that will pass through the Earth when certain things that, let's say, conspiracy hypothesis theorists, I don't like that word because a theory is something we pretty much agree on, conspiracy hypos come up with strange things, but you never know. Some of those strange things could be quite closer to epistemo-ontological reciprocity and far less of being epistemo-ontological entanglement. Now, the reason why people like to practice epistemo-ontological entanglement is that they believe they create their own reality through the story, as though we live in some kind of matrix and all you have to do is believe hard enough and then you can create your reality. And to some degree, that's true. That's why it's entanglement. If you really believe you're super wealthy and you can become president of the United States, you tell yourself that story enough, you get enough people to believe in it, enough people believe in it, they vote for you, and next thing you know, hey, I'm president of the United States. Or anything else in life. Personally, I like the idea of telling myself stories that are as accurate as possible, but you cannot get down to infinite detail because there's an opportunity cost in terms of time and energy when doing it. For instance, this is a very nice sharp little crater here, but do I really want to spend the time to memorize its name? Whereas this crater here presents itself quite often and is very interesting, and maybe it deserves to be remembered. So, should I spend my time remembering that one or that one? Well, that's my choice. And in life, you get to choose. And when you get to choose, just remember there's opportunity cost when you choose one thing. That means you're not choosing a multitude of other things. Find the thing in life that you are most likely to resonate with in terms of choices. For me, I like being an astronomer, a generalist. I'm a cosmologist, a generalist. I like being a jazz musician. I've been a writer in the past. There's all kinds of things I've done, and those things come, those things go. And with that, I'm going to say Carpe Noctem. I did not see anything transit the moon, but it's been an interesting enough discussion. I may post this up anyway. Carpe Noctem.